There is absolutely nothing funnier in life than someone dying. Think about it. You spend each and every moment of your existence working toward a totality of nothing. Everything you do has a return of zero, regardless of your spiritual belief or cosmic outlook, and death is a 100% inevitability in all lifetimes. Don't go trying to pull a fast one on me by saying that you're going to be the first person ever to live forever. So far, the universe is batting at 0% average at the metaphysical idea that unless you're a jellyfish or some other distinctly non-human entity, it's not gonna happen. Even if you're on the life after death train, the phrase after death is key there because you believe in whatever deity of your choice that will only promise you immortality once you've had your inaugural tea time with the Grim Reaper. Try all you like to bend the rules with reincarnation, but life's New Game Plus option still has a Mortis bullet point firmly in the center of the target of the circle of life. Any of you out there believe in a soul? Well, what happens to your body when that thing finally decides to move on to another realm? I sincerely doubt it's going to have an easy time surviving as a hollow husk of non-powered tissue. Fact is, you're going to die whether you like it or not. And that single-handedly is the funniest joke that anyone could ever tell. To look around at how amazing life is and realize that each and every path in it through conscious effort or the automation of nature just leads to a null existence through heat and energy loss. And it's even funnier when the death is tragic or sudden, because then you aren't even given anything of merit to cling onto and realizing infinite darkness. You're left at the threshold of fulfillment just to go back to where you were before you were even born, a small speck of sand in the hourglass of time. And my main point is this. This is the next part in my series, Weird Deaths, where I do what every single educational YouTuber does and rip off Wikipedia pages verbatim to give you information that you're probably gonna forget within the next week. I read through a section of the list, pick out the funnier entries, discard the more generally depressing and boring ones, and crack jokes that are guaranteed to make you say, wow, I can trust this guy with my social security number. I'll leave it in the comments right now. For this video, we're going to be tackling the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and for a potential handful of you out there watching, some of these deaths may hit a bit closer to home. My previous videos in this series all featured casualties that were, at a minimum, 60-year-old events or older, but now we're talking about more recent death records out there, and I'm going to do my best to lighten everyone's primal fear of the dreamless rest. Take solace if any of these in particular affect you personally, because the fact that this is a shared experience that each and every human being on the planet goes through should comfort you, because there's no funnier joke the universe can tell than extinction, and I, along with many others, know there's nothing else to do in the face of death but laugh. Clarence Hudson was a 66-year-old department store janitor living in Wenatchee, Washington. Well, he was until he left this mortal coil in what unfortunately seemed to be a self-inflicted fatality. But you know what? As an outside observer with no emotional investment in this story whatsoever, just like everyone who watches mainstream news, I am glad this horrible tragedy happened for my entertainment. Why? Because Clarence decided to go out in a shockingly elaborate way, pun intended. Clarence was found by local police in his easy chair clutching some electrical wires and a, quoting the article here, homemade electrical apparatus. Wrapped around his head was a wet towel. Wrapped around his feet was another wet towel. And attached to his temples were 2 quarters, each with a wire leading from them to a homemade transformer. That's right, Clarence Hudson was assassinated by the evil Megatron in a plot to frame Optimus Prime and cause chaos amongst the Autobots. No, not that kind of transformer, you idiot. The kind that delivers electricity. Clarence had made an entire fully functional electric chair out of some coins, some wire, and a chair. This man just MacGyvered himself to the afterlife, and pretty damn effectively too. Police estimated he had received over 1,000 volts through his body. Considering that all it takes is 30 volts to stop someone's heart with a potentially lethal charge, Clarence probably set his chair to the rotisserie chicken setting and shrugged, saying it really didn't matter anyway. Perhaps a bit stranger is the only source for this story available. It was reported in the Fort Lauderdale News newspaper back in the 60s, the day after it happened. Fort Lauderdale is in the lawless sovereign land of Florida, not Washington. I'm going to assume some local or Washington-based newspapers covered the story first, but I really can't find anything else talking about this one online. There just isn't any pop-up history blogs talking about this, and it's just the Wikipedia entry followed by a link to the Fort Lauderdale newspaper. And even sillier is that to read this newspaper article, the website archiving it wants you to pay $75 fucking every 6 months just to access their database. Who in their right mind is going to read so many old newspapers that it warrants more than the cost of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom twice a year? I'm perfectly happy using the algorithmically extracted article preview text, thank you very much. After all, the newspaper page is printed verbatim right here on the website. Why would I... Wait a minute. Scroll down. Shirts, ICI-5-7 Sturgis I-V by Icky Brothers. My god, I haven't seen anyone advertise that in ages. They're tapered, cotton, and even come in loaded green? Fuck's my credit card. Oh, I'm coming, babies. Common wisdom for childhood nutrition is you gotta eat all your vitamins, although maybe times have changed. I personally stopped watching Sesame Street around season 48 when for some reason they thought dedicating 6 straight episodes to Elmo's Communist Manifesto was a good idea. Or perhaps London-born health guru Basil Brown marathoned programming made for preschoolers, because the guy just could not get enough vitamins. Spiraling somehow on the other end of unhealthy addictions and blatantly suffering from a healthy addiction, Basil was addicted to drinking carrot juice, and in the weeks before his death, he was drinking about a gallon of carrot juice every single day. He drank so much carrot juice, his skin had turned bright yellow. So what did end up killing him? Well, a normal dose of vitamin A is about 2,000 to 3,000 international units, which is a standard unit of measurement for vitamins. This varies greatly based on age and from person to person. More importantly, your body is also pretty damn good at filtering out unused vitamins, as the daily tolerance of vitamin A is thought to be about 10,000 units. Basil was drinking about 7 million units of vitamin A per day in the time leading up to his death. That's a lot, and just a bit too much for your body to handle. It was about this time everyone's favorite disorder, psoriasis of the liver, kicked in, and Basil kicked the bucket. I don't know if his name was Basil or Basil, and I don't care. What I care about is that I knew those writers over at Blue's Clues were lying motherfuckers. Healthy food is just as dangerous as junk food. Remind me when this video ends to eat an entire industrial pallet of potato chips every single day. Nothing in life matters anymore if I can't trust a talking blue dog to tell me what to do. Alex Mitchell died the same way everyone who enjoys Oshi no Ko will die, while having absolutely terrible taste. Let's talk about the retrospective, non-tabloid-esque facts first. Years after Alex died, doctors reevaluated the case I'm about to tell you about, alongside testimony from his granddaughter, and proclaimed that he had died of heart failure caused by a genetic condition called long QT syndrome. Hey, long QT, that's what I am. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the inciting incident and what was initially said to be the cause of his death. Alex Mitchell died from heart failure brought on by laughing for 25 minutes straight at an episode of a British comedy TV show. Ugh. Just to prove I'm not in the wrong here, I looked up exactly what show killed Mr. Mitchell, and it was the episode Kung Fu Capers of The Goodies. Here's a time-lapse of me watching the entire episode. It wasn't good. Probably the most justified death on this list, if you ask me. Okay, I think we as a society need to construct a high-powered precision laser so that we can etch a message onto the moon for all of humanity to read that'll say, drinking too much of anything is dangerous. Just drink stuff normally. Because Tina Christopherson died of water intoxication after drinking 4 gallons of water in one sitting. Why'd she do that? She thought she had stomach cancer, and that drowning her stomach would cure it. It didn't. She died. That's why she's on this list, and what led me to exacerbating this point to make you giggle while simultaneously dragging out my runtime analytics to generate even more revenue. In a fucked up, matter-of-fact way, her death has done absolutely nothing but benefit you, me, and the millions upon millions of other people watching this video. And in a grand scale perspective, Tina benefited from her demise this way because the circumstances allowed her memory to continue on, compared to if she simply faded out of public consciousness. Isn't existence fucked up? Oh well, don't think about that too hard. Join me in laughing at this next unfortunate fuck. Luciano Ricciconi was a pretty big deal. He was a key player in Italian football in the 70s. I don't mean Italian football like how American football is its own thing. Except I do, because by football they mean soccer, but as American, when I hear football, I think football, but then they call American football, not soccer. He's a soccer player, god damn it, it doesn't matter. Luciano was a top-tier Italian soccer player for the SS Lazio football club, and was a standout asset on his team and took home some very important championships. Italians care about soccer. You should not care about these details beyond he was a famous athlete on a famous Italian soccer team, which was beloved all throughout the country, whose greatest claim to fame is giving landholder rights to the Super Mario Brothers. Around Luciano's peak in the mid-70s, his team became synonymous with a gay swingers party 20 minutes after the cocaine arrives. They were a rowdy bunch of ball handlers. Their device in particular for romping hard with the boys was pranks. The team loved to pull pranks on everything that could conceive the concept of being duped. Also, the team had a reputation for owning guns and shooting them off randomly for fun, which isn't directly related to this tale of totality, but is a nice little mood setter you're gonna want to remember. So it's January 18th, 1977, which is coincidentally National Pull Stupid Pranks Day in Italy. Isn't that crazy timing? It's like a spooky story happening on Halloween, or the banks being closed on Free Money Day, which everyone knows is coincidentally the very day this video is being uploaded. Hey, this isn't a paid integration, I've just got a partnership that I really like, so I'm sneaking it in there. If you want to give me some free money and support my channel in the process, check out GamerSupps linked in the description. If you use code Huggbees, you'll get 10% discounts on snacks, drinks, and merchandise with God's favorite creature, big-tittied anime girls on them. And a portion of all those sales goes directly into my pocket, which I have a 99% chance of spending on sunglasses because fuck, these things are expensive. And I should really do a video on how exploitative the sunglasses market is. Either way, check out GamerSupps, get yourself something nice, put a George Washington in my pocket, especially since I don't know where I just put my credit card. It's win-win. More importantly, check out my second channel, Huggbees Gamer Mode, which is also linked in the description, because that's just more ad revenue for me, and I really like making it. It's a lot of fun. It's more casual, and I just do it in my free time. That's how much I fucking enjoy it, instead of slaving away at it for hundreds of hours like I do my regular videos. Boy, eventually my videos are going to be nothing but me self-promoting, aren't they? And you'll gobble it up, because that's the modern entertainment industry. I'm famous by what I recommend. I love you though. I'm also kidding. I work really hard. Wow, what a fantastic tangent. Let's get back to this guy who died for a stupid reason. Luciano's team was notorious for being a rowdy bunch who loved pranking things, and it's the day of the deed. Luciano, his teammate Pietro Guedin, and a third friend were hanging out in Rome and decided to prank the owner of a jewelry store they were familiar with, a Mr. Bruno Tabacchini. The soccer scoundrels did this with a genius, well-thought-out plan of incredibly clever hijinks. They wore some masks, burst through the front door, and yelled, "Hands up, this is a stick-up." Hilarious and witty, I know. I'm jealous that in my decades-long comedic writing career, I could never come up with such an incredible prank. In fact, the store owner was so side-split that he celebrated the occasion by trying to split the rib cages of these buffoons, because Bruno's store had actually been robbed just a few weeks earlier, so he was now keeping a loaded shotgun underneath the counter. Bruno slugged the long gun from up behind the counter and aimed it at the assholish adolescents. Pietro Guedin noticed the shotgun and put his hands in the air, but Luciano, perhaps out of his newfound lust for being an obnoxious piece of shit, decided to keep the prank going. His juvenile antics were rewarded with a drop kick of buckshot straight into his chest. Bruno shot him all right, shot him so good and hard that Luciano died 30 minutes after being blasted. Reportedly, his final words were him yelling one single phrase over and over again. It's just a joke. My review of this incident can be summarized with one single phrase: deserved. We put the kibosh on Luciano's retirement, potentially featuring a future YouTube prank channel, and for that Bruno has done a service worthy of God's kingdom of heaven. I don't need to remind you all out there that if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, but this wasn't even a stupid game. This was taking off your pants, bending over, and pre-lubricating your asshole before you got in a bullfight. Kurt Goodell was a big sciencey guy who did a whole lot of science. I sat at my computer staring at my script, trying to find a way to genuinely hype myself up to read through this man's online biography and all of his achievements and then condense it down into a format that you would all enjoy, but admittedly, I don't care that much. I'm just here to learn how he croaked. If you really need context for the next contestant of the Cadaver Cavalcade, he was a renowned mathematician and philosopher who published a good handful of revolutionary theorems and made a lot of declarations on various mathematical foundations that are still being expounded upon today. Great. More trivia for the next woman you hit up on Tinder. That'll definitely get the pussies dripping. Let's get to the good bit. At the age of 71, Goodell's squishy and valuable mind began to break down, mostly manifesting itself in severe paranoia. Severe is the description the internet often uses in this case, but I'm gonna go ahead and swap it to justified, because this guy was Austrian, and he got a front row seat in witnessing the rise of, well, let's just say the most controversial period in Europe's history. Perhaps one that a prominent person from Austria played a really big role in. And from that, Goodell especially had a fear of being poisoned, partially brought on because his dear friend Moritz Schlick had been assassinated in 1936 by being shot with a gun. Yep, everyone saw that twist coming. He was shot by one of his students who had nothing to do with poison whatsoever. I mean, that would be stupid. Regardless, Goodell lived amid some very scary shit, and he had become, with a very relevant adjective for emphasis, deathly afraid of being poisoned. This fear grew to the point where he would only eat food if it was explicitly cooked and prepared by his wife Adele. Unfortunately, Adele set fire to Goodell's reign when she became hospitalized in late 1977. So what's a man to do when his only source of trusted food has become stripped away from him? Why, it's simple, of course. Starve to death. Well, that's exactly what Goodell did, proving once and for all that mental illness is bad, I guess. Or I guess he proved definitively that not eating is bad. That's pretty obvious, but maybe one of you out there needed to hear that so you could power down a Quest bar or two. Okay, there's probably some real poison fanatics in the comments berating me for not giving them the juicy poisoning they were hyping themselves up for. Fine. Here it is. On September 7th, 1978, Bulgarian political dissident Georgy Markov was killed via ricin poisoning. Damn, that is an unusual death. I mean, ricin's a toxin that's made from the same plant that makes castor oil. A lot of you are probably familiar with it due to its use as a plot device in Breaking Bad. It's such a disgustingly lethal poison that an average dose of just 22 micrograms is enough to kill someone. From my research, Markov was the first person, or at least the first political figure, to be assassinated via ricin poisoning. That definitely makes this unusual and strange and downright historic. Oh, wait, hang on. Nope. Breaking news. We're being given a memo. I'm being given a memo right into the studio, an all points bulletin, brand new updated information. This memo may or may not just be a piece of paper I left on my desk as a comedic prop. That's not important. What it says on the memo is Markov's death wasn't weird because of the fact he died of ricin poisoning. What? Markov's death was weird because he first began to show signs of poisoning after suffering a tiny red sting mark on the back of his leg, which he attributed to a bug bite. After he grew progressively more sick and died 4 days later, an autopsy was ordered due to the mysterious circumstances of the fatality. Okay, this is a blank piece of paper. This joke is getting stupid now. I'm just going to tell you what happened. Rufus Crumpton, the mortician who examined Markov, removed a small pellet from his leg, measuring only 1.7 millimeters in size, which is smaller smaller than the head of a pin and even smaller than something measuring 1.8 millimeters in size. The pellet had 2 different holes in it like a cumbersome bowling ball. Based on Markov's symptoms and the delivery method, scientists deduced that this was in fact ricin poisoning. And their deductions would be all but confirmed when they aligned Markov's death with a different assassination attempt on another Bulgarian defector that happened earlier that week. Oleg Kalugin, a KGB defector, stepped into the picture at the time and finally murmured among the crowd, "You know, you guys should probably add Markov's death to the Wikipedia list of unusual deaths." And when someone was brave enough to ask him why without shitting their pants in fear, Oleg said because Markov was killed by the Bulgarian Secret Service working with the KGB and he was shot by an umbrella gun. An umbrella gun, which because of this incident has now been given the official title of a Bulgarian umbrella, is just what it sounds like. It's an umbrella that fires a single dart from the tip. In the case of Markov's murder, the assassin fired a ricin-coated pellet from the umbrella into his leg. That is some James Bond shit, and a good reminder that the Cold War lasted all the way until 1991, because this type of thing could totally come out of the Soviet Union in the 70s. I didn't really know how to end this segment since this whole thing's just really cool, and while trying to come up with an outro, I realized that I could potentially end every segment with, well, at least you're not, the person, and then explain how they died. So for example, I could end this section with, well, at least if you're ever having a bad day, just remember at least no one ever shot a ricin-tip dart into your leg using an umbrella gun. No, wait, no, that sounds awesome. That sounds like an awesome way to die. Never mind, I played GoldenEye. I always wish Pierce Brosnan was real. I don't want to talk about Robert Williams too long because they have a very exciting title with a really underwhelming method of achieving it. Robert Williams was the first human ever killed by a robot. Amazing, right? Well, put your robo-boner back in your pants because I'm not referring to being gunned down by the Terminator or having the Boston Dynamics dog explode your kidneys while trying to upright itself. Robert worked at a factory for Ford Motors and was crushed to death by one of these big mechanical robot arms. Long story short, the robot was in charge of pulling things from a giant inventory storage shelving unit. The robot reported errors on its latest task, so Robert went in to manually retrieve the part. The robot fired back on and crushed him to death. I know, I'm also disappointed Robert didn't die of lead poisoning after taking Bender up on his offer to literally bite his shiny metal ass. There were wrongful death suits filed against both Ford for the lack of safety supervision and the makers of the robot arm because of an alleged faulty design. Look, I get it. It happened in 1979, so I really shouldn't expect too much from the title of first human killed by a robot, but by this point in time, Star Wars had already premiered worldwide, and part of me really just wanted to see Robert have his neck run over by R2-D2's treads. And hey, if you're ever having a bad day, just remember that your neck wasn't run over by R2-D2's treads. Drones! What happened to drones? I mean, they're still out there and whizzing around for enthusiasts and the occasional video camera shot, but that's kind of all they do, isn't it? Whatever happened to Amazon instantly bringing me all my deliveries to my front door via drone? How much do I have to pay to have OnlyFans girls Polaroid their pussies and send them to me via drone delivery? I don't care much for financially backing strangers for putting their back into it, but I'd certainly pay for a more cumbersome, less convenient method of package shipping. Hell, I'm one of those freaks that thinks Death Stranding is one of the best video games I've ever played, and that game's just if Stalker and UPS had an abortion. Quick side note before we get into this one, because there's a lot to talk about. There's a substantial handful of newspaper articles and online blogs talking about the incident, including a Snopes page that decidedly confirms that this entire thing happened. For my writing in particular, I'm almost exclusively going to reference this blog post written by Fane Greenwood, because it is extensive, elaborate, and easily the best write-up I've seen of this entire debacle, as well as potentially any weird death on the list. I'll link it in the description if you want a more thorough version of the story I'm about to tell you. It is very well put together read that has only gotten 2 likes since it was posted back in 2021, proving that you stupid motherfuckers really just perpetuate garbage around the internet while not giving quality content the respect it deserves. Am I at 2 billion views a video yet? No, I rest my case. Thanks, you jerks. I hope killing genuine articles of intrigue was worth it to put even more reaction content on the front page of the internet. Just go watch the video yourselves, you lazy parasocial leech. Don't let other people experience entertainment entertainment for you. John Bowen was a plucky young lad among the 45,000 fans packed into Shea Stadium watching the New England Patriots square off against the New York Jets. And as every football fan does when halftime was announced, John half shrugged and went, I guess I'll watch the halftime show, fuck it. But perhaps John should have been a more attentive viewer, because this halftime show would have been his last. The act performing at this halftime show was a group known as the Electronic Eagles, which was a model air show performance group. Drones, model airplanes, RC helicopters, all that good stuff. If it flew through the air, was the size of a small dog, and cost way too much money for your father's broke ass to spend this Christmas, the Electronic Eagles performed with it. This is where the story gets fun, and where I personally get to potentially ruin a long-running meme for you if you don't know what I'm about to tell you. So the show's going off and all the planes are doing their plane things, but two of the planes in the Eagles roster are fun little gimmick planes. The first one is Snoopy's doghouse playing on the Red Baron gag from the Peanuts comic strip, but the other one is a lawnmower. Many of you have probably seen this mysterious clip floating around the internet, remixed and mashed up with all sorts of music and captions and God knows what else. Here's the Know Your Meme page for it. Well, now you can rest easy knowing that this thing is real and it has killed someone. And it's actually not even that strange of an idea, but rather a gimmick plane that's been around for a really long time. You can buy this thing and make it yourself if you're able to find an online listing for it. All the links that I saw unfortunately lead to places that no longer are in service, but maybe with some snooping around out there you can track one down yourself. Philip Cushman, an auto collision repairman, put together this particular Sky Cutter and was the one set to pilot it at the day of the show. And he couldn't rev up this green gimmick soon enough because the show was going terribly. The Snoopy plane crashed early into its flight and some of the other planes just wouldn't start at all. Here comes Cushman to the rescue with his John Deere approved crowd pleaser. So your Flyboy halftime show is dive bombing spectacularly, and you've really only got one plane now that's capturing the hearts of the pissed off New Yorkers. Side note, how do we know the New Yorkers were pissed off? Because they were New Yorkers. What do you do to get them to... Okay, well, they're New Yorkers, so they're never gonna calm down and be truly happy, but let's say get them to complain a little bit less after the show and curb their pretentiousness a little bit. Well, what you do is, you start getting risky. According to a quote from Ray Warner, one of the spectators at the event, they were sending those things right over the crowd. I had an aisle seat near an exit, and I had it in mind that if it came near me, I would run. It seems so stupid, so sick to send this thing over these people. Well, you've without a doubt figured out what happens next, seeing as I tease the airplane design so much and the tension building around this spectacle is easily discernible. Let me first instead hype you up for another angle to this impending crash you didn't possibly expect. That it might go down as one of the most American deaths in human history. Obviously, the lawnmower airplane lost control and careened straight into John Bowen, absolutely obliterating his body with wounds similar to what one spectator described as a violent axe murder, and another one stated as if a grenade went off in the stands. I can feel my patriotism swelling a little bit. The goddamn American beast within me is rearing its forever saluting forehead. So John was killed by a flying lawnmower, a decidedly Americanized tool thanks to our obsessiveness over non-native grasses and lawn care culture. John was killed by a flying lawnmower at an American football game, which, whew, I'm getting the Declaration of Independence sweats here. He was killed by a flying lawnmower at an American football game, which didn't even stop after the accident happened. Oh boy. And to put the sweet Lady Liberty cherry on this Sunday of patriotism, as soon as the crash happened, the fans in the stadium began chanting, "Sue! Sue! Sue!" Oh! There is nothing more stars and stripes than immediately seeking professional litigation and compensation. Oh, fuck. Oh, it's happening. I am becoming overloaded with pledged allegiance. Oh, the founding fathers are flowing within me. It's the closest to godhood that I'll ever be. But now's not the time. I have to continue educating the masses. I have to keep this newfound freedom at bay. The only thing right now that can restrain my power is if I humble myself by venturing to Nara Park in Japan and feed one of the famous bowing deer a treat. Now I feel better. Back to the video. John and some other spectators were taken to the hospital, but John died of his wounds. That's the end of this doomsday drama, but the article I mentioned earlier talks about many more interesting angles to this story, such as the fad of novelty model planes and how RC vehicle laws radically changed potentially in reaction to this event. I cannot recommend the blog post in the description enough, as well as my second channel, Gamerstuff, and all that other stuff that earns me fat stacks of cash. Give the article a read aside from my fucking chicanery. Not right now. I've got plenty of other song and dance to do up here while you hurl digital nickels at the screen, and if you leave now, you'll miss the worst one. Alright, we are now on to the worst one. This is currently episode 6 of my Weird Death series, episode 8 if you include the 2 individual story special episodes. Within this series, I have probably talked about well over 100 deaths. I can easily, without question, confirm that the death of Monica Myers is the worst one I have read thus far. There's been plenty of deaths written about on the Wikipedia article I'm referencing that I omit, because they're just depressing or really not that interesting, and there are some that are far more gruesome than Monica's death. But this one just sucks. It just fucking sucks, but it's also really funny. Which means, of course, I have to talk about it. Monica Myers was the mayor of Betterton, Maryland back in 1980. Betterton is an extremely small town of only around 300 people. So if these mild-mannered middle Atlanticers wanted to maintain their meager existence, everyone had to pitch in, regardless of station. Myers was known to volunteer her time at the town's sewage treatment plant, cleaning tanks, running tests, sewer stuff. Through one way or another, Myers slipped from the catwalks and fell into... there's really no other way to put it. She fell into a 15-foot deep tank of human waste and drowned in it. Yeah, she drowned in other people's shit. According to investigating Deputy Buster Blackiston, he said, and I quote, "It was just like putty. She didn't have a chance to get out." Wow, that fucking sucks. And originally was where this section would end. I'd maybe throw in a feces-related pun or two, maybe drop the humorous charade for a bit and really sink in just how much this one distressed me for some reason. Except, this story may be exactly the same as Monica Myers. Full of shit. While looking up information on this story, I noticed something unusual. On the Wikipedia list entry, Monica's name is spelled Monica Myers, M-O-N-I-C-A-M-Y-E-R-S. Wikipedia links 2 sources for this story. The first is a newspaper article from the day after it happened. Pretty straightforward, there's no inconsistencies here. But the second is this clickbait 35 amazing weird deaths article from a random website that has no proof or citations of its own and is in no way a valid source whatsoever. Get your shit together, Wikipedia. I actually found a ton of sources like this on the unusual deaths list, and let me tell you, your standards are getting sloppy. Oh, you know, I just realized that it's gonna be a while before I can say the phrase, get your shit together. Now, one citation isn't enough for me most of the time. I usually try to find 3 sources on a subject before I begin writing, just to make sure I get all the facts and the most accurate version of the story I can. Now, Wikipedia does a decent job overall, but it almost always leaves out details, and you would not believe how many times one website lists the amazing factoids that other ones miss, and then you research those factoid details and it leads to even further information that's worth talking about. I distinctly remember my video on the history of intentional train crashes was a ton of me telephoning pieces of information together. You'd mostly find people talking about the major events and the giant explosion crash, crash, but piecing together the full history was a lot of legwork on my part. I'll link that video in the description too, because let's be honest, it was a damn good video, and this is all relevant, I promise. So I found another newspaper article talking about this. The facts, while brief, are the same. Same age, same town, same cause of death, published the day after it happened, same person? Monica's name in this article is listed as Monica Meyers, M-E-Y-E-R-S. Huh. Weird. Okay, well, let me just find another source. Here we go. An in-depth internet write-up of what happened. The tragically gross 1980 death of Mayor Monica Mayer? Huh? First she's Monica Myers, now she's Monica Meyers, and now just Monica Mayer. And another potential point of confusion is in this article. They use the possessive Mayers, except if that's the word Mayers, the apostrophe should be on the outside, since the S is part of the original name. This article typoed the person they were talking about within just 3 sentences, potentially twice. It's about this point I began to ask a simple question. What was her name? I checked out the official site for Betterton, Maryland, which is of course www.townofbetterton.com, and they only seem to list the current city officials. This led me to a website called Maryland Manual Online, where you can search up more specific information from the state, and hey, there happens to be a listing for the mayors of Betterton. There we go! The mayor from 1978 to 1982 is William Farman? But hang on, what about Monica Myers? She was the mayor in 1980. And here's where things really began to stir my old ironclad noggin. I'm no stranger to disproving misinformation. Hell, I did so in an episode of this very series. You can check it out, I'll link it in the description, but long story short, I got Wikipedia rewritten to remove an unusual death entry by proving that it was, in fact, very typical. I thought I really had something here, something that would explain all of this. Think about it. Monica was the mayor of Betterton, but she's not listed on historical record, and her last name is spelled differently in primary sources from right after the incident? The conclusion I initially came to is that Monica Myers was never the mayor at all. Her last name was instead conflated with her title. If her last name was Mayer, M-E-Y-E-R, it's very, very close to being pronounced the same as mayor. And maybe in the 1980s, the reporters mistook her for being the mayor of the town when in fact her last name was just deviously similar. And from that, maybe this story didn't even happen at all. Who knows what secrets are being held behind this 40-year-old tale of a disgusting drowning? It was about here my research ground to a halt. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I was writing all of this on a Sunday night, so I set my alarm and woke up early the next morning. And at 8:30 a.m. on Monday, I called the Betterton Town Hall to get to the bottom of this. A very nice woman answered the phone, and after introducing myself and explaining that I'm doing a history video involving the town of Betterton, she agreed to answer my questions. My first one was an immediate straight shot at the heart of this matter. I asked her, was there a mayor in your town in the 1980s by the name of Monica Myers? And her immediate response, word for word, was, oh, you mean the one that drowned? Yeah, she was the mayor. Fuck. There goes my story, I guess. On one hand, it was nice to make sure that I had the truth behind all of this, but I was also a bit disappointed that what I perceived to be a big grand reveal of a mystery was just nothing. I had a brief conversation with her and she explained that Monica Myers was in fact the mayor, and the website that I referred to probably just omitted her name from the record or something. It's not maintained by the town, and the town really only manages the information on their official website and nothing more. The woman on the phone then said she would pass my information along to Carolyn Sorge, the mayor of the town until 2014 and someone who's lived there her entire life and presumably still lives there today. But by this point it just didn't really matter to me. As of this script and me recording this video, she has not called me back, and I'm not too zealous by this point to continue pursuing the story because I really just don't think there's much else to it. And a large part of this is because with her new, full, confirmed name in tow, I did some more in-depth searching for Monica King Myers, and I found her gravestone listing. All the information checked out exactly. Same age, same name, and she was buried in a cemetery just down the road from Betterton. And this really puts some things into perspective. While my intentions on this subject were entirely noble, trying to either dissuade sensationalized misinformation or confirm the identity of someone whose name was bastardized in the media, it really gave me perspective on something I haven't touched on too much in this series. These are people. People who suffered tragedy and had other people affected by it. I have no personal connection to Monica Myers or Betterton or anything of the sort. I just wanted to get to the true story, and it turned out to be exactly what we were told. Now, if I had a much less respectable character, I easily could have made this an over-dramatized cliffhanger-style mystery piece on something that's largely is what it is. The amount of clickbait and money I could generate from making this a big hoopla over something that's really not much of a story is insurmountable. I originally wanted to put this section at the very end of the video. Maybe turn this video into a point that entertainment like this only ever exists vicariously, and the entire YouTube true crime market has dangerous repercussions in the hands of people lacking empathy or seeking exploitation. And I may even have called out the audience a little bit and reminding them that it's just a little bit fucked up that one of our most popular forms of entertainment is getting hyped up over all the ways that people have died or killed each other. But I don't want to do that, because putting it in the middle of this video sends a stronger message that's more realistic. Life goes on. People don't ever truly care about each other until they establish a personal connection, and entertainment will always outweigh people's principles. Besides, admittedly, I'm a bit too nihilistic to care, and in my view, the fact I was upfront and honest with my intentions during the phone interview and with you right now instead of exploiting your viewership is good enough for me. I'm not here to inflate a story just to get your attention and money, because everything I do by default is already better than all of my competition. And besides, by the time this video ends, I'll probably have moved on. And you will have too. David Grundman, true to having the name of a South Park character, had a fairly debaucherous way of blowing off steam. He'd head to the Arizona desert to shoot cactus. In 1982, Grundman scooped up his equally funny named roommate James Joseph Suchochi so that they could go put a slug in every saguaro they could see. According to Suchochi, Grundman blasted a nearby cactus in the trunk until it fell over like... You know what, I probably shouldn't be making that reference. You know what I'm referring to. The first one was easy, he told his roommate, whose name I'm gonna stop saying because it's really fucking hard to say rapid fire, as he set his sights on a far bigger prize. A second saguaro, roughly over 100 years old, and standing over 26 feet tall. Did that fuck anyone else up to hear out loud? Cactuses growing to be slightly shorter than two of me stacked on top of each other is crazy tall. Anywho, Grundman took aim at the lumbering leafless plant and fired. Hey, look at this plant real quick. There's two key features about these things you need to know, and when you learn them, you can probably figure out how Grundman signed his own death certificate. I'll give you a hint, it doesn't really have much to do with the sharp, pointy spines. First off, most cacti have limbs like langly-gangly people do. Sure, there's almost always a prominent trunk from which they grow, but there's smaller pieces to the prickly puzzle. And second, a cactus is heavy, really heavy. Something like this is estimated to weigh over 2,000 pounds because they're full of water. On average, a 1-foot section of cactus can typically weigh around 100 pounds. Well, when Grundman decided to do some landscaping American style, he blasted a 4-foot piece of cactus off the main trunk, which came careening towards him. You know what's a wee bit lethal to the human body? A 400-pound spiked tree trunk hurtling at someone with the force of a shotgun blast. Grundman was crushed, and not just emotionally because he couldn't shoot innocent wildlife anymore. If you need further reading on the subject, consider playing Dark Souls. Not only can you recreate this event verbatim, but everyone knows that cacti are the Dark Souls of plants. Now we get to talk about both Michael Scaglione and Jeremy Breno. These next two entries occurred many years apart, but are nearly the exact same story, so I just lumped them together. Both men were avid golfers and were practicing a very important part of golf, smashing your club in frustration when you realize how much you suck ass at golf. In both instances, Scaglione smashing his club against a golf cart and Breno smashing it on a bench, the golf clubs turned barbarian clubs in question snapped, and ricocheted a piece of their jagged metal bodies back to the warriors who chose to wield them. Scaglione and Breno both took unfortunate deep cuts to major arteries from the blowback of breaking their back 9 batons, and subsequently bled to death. The moral of the story is, don't suck at golf. Or maybe even more wise, don't bother playing golf at all, because life's too short to waste your time on something so boring. Richard Wertheim's story is pretty much a straightforward game, set, and match. He was a tennis lineman who was officiating during the 1983 US Open. During the game, player Stefan Edberg goofed up his serve and sent a professional speed-level tennis ball straight into Richard's groin. This blow to the groin knocked him out of his chair, whereupon he hit his head on the court and fell into unconsciousness. He died about 5 days later. This story isn't really that spectacularly interesting, but I wanted to point out one specific fact from it. Richard often went by the nickname Dick, as a lot of older men named Richard tend to do, and his last name was spelled W-E-R-T-H-E-I-M. If we swap the W in his last name to an H, then his full name curiously looks like Dick Hurt Him, and I'll bet it did after he got that tennis ball launched into it. Alright, let's talk about the Condor Club. According to a plaque on the outside of the building, it is the world's first full-nude entertainment venue, going fully topless and bottomless by 1969. I'm not sure how much I believe that, since your mother turned 18 in 1962, but what we do know is their old bouncer Jimmy Ferrazzo died there in a downright historic way. Finally, after all these years, I get to talk about someone who died like a real hero. Jimmy Ferrazzo deserves his own national holiday with how spectacularly he went out. We can slot it in the middle of August between National Huggbees Day and International Fuck August Day. Jimmy Ferrazzo, nicknamed Jimmy the Beard, was having sex with his girlfriend on top of the club's piano. Now, everyone does that, that's not too unusual yet. Except this particular piano was more of a prop for the strippers of the club to strip on. The piano in question was hooked to a platform that would raise and lower into the ceiling. Mid-bone zone, Jimmy accidentally activated the rising mechanism of the piano, and rather than give up his God-given right to get some gooch, he rode both his girlfriend and that piano all the way to the top, where he became trapped between the ceiling and her, dying of asphyxiation. Somehow his girlfriend, being trapped for who knows how long under a 240-pound man, suffered only minor bruises, although the articles never mention where the bruises were, if you know what I mean. Someone died. This next one is potentially the most tragic of all for two important reasons. Firstly, because it was someone famous, and everyone knows celebrities are more important than other sorts of people. And two, because it was someone very attractive, and that just makes him probably the most important person of all time.
John.
Eric Hexum was a disgustingly handsome television and movie actor who had about 6 credited roles to his name. Yeah, looking at him, I think if I saw him, I'd ask him for a little bit of sex. You probably would too, I mean, look at him. John Eric was on the set of what would be his final performance, an episode of the CBS television show Cover Up. For his next scene, John Eric's character was supposed to load a .44 Magnum, so the prop department provided him with a functional gun and some blanks, unaware that they had also just provided him with his own death trap. Richard Culla, director of the episode, just wasn't happy with how it was all coming together, so production ground to a halt as he tried to beat the bear slurping away at his delicious filmmaking honey known as director perfectionism. John Eric got a little bit bored during the hiatus and put a single blank round into his gun, spun the chamber, and pretended like he was one of the many voyagers to embark down the road of Russian roulette. Unfortunately, he soon became a voyager of the unknown because this killed him. Blank rounds are named a bit innocuously in terms of their actual potential. A blank round can absolutely still do damage to someone depending on how it's constructed and fired. Well, it turns out John Eric was first and foremost extremely fucking attractive, just look at him. But he was secondly very unlucky. His trigger pull in his Russian roulette game happened to land on the chamber with the blank in it, and the muzzle blast from the gun generated enough force to crack his skull, propelling one of the pieces directly into his brain, with the resulting hemorrhaging giving him immediate and total brain damage. Over the course of 6 days and many emergency surgeries, he was declared brain dead and then eventually made a full-time resident of the Grim Reaper's Hotel. In perhaps a somewhat uplifting climax to this story, John Eric's body was pulled apart so that nearly all of it was donated to a large list of people awaiting organ transplants. You can read the list on Wikipedia if you want to feel good about something. One of them was even a 3-year-old boy who needed a skin transplant after suffering 3rd-degree burns. Aw, what a nice gesture. Someone that handsome giving you their organs? That's probably gotta boost your attractiveness up by at least like 5%. A healthy liver's nothing to sneeze at. However, the making of a male model in this particular question might not align to that wholesome ending, since the show he was on continued filming after his death, and killed his character off-screen with a text tribute at the end of the episode that spelled his name wrong. I gotta say, they did a pretty sloppy job of a cover-up of all this. Okay, wait a minute. That's the name of the show he was working on. Oh, that's too funny. Slipping that in there like that. Okay. I'm sorry for the lame joke, guys. I couldn't help myself. I promise it won't ever happen again. Oh wait, just kidding. I actually inserted the title of every single John Eric role into this section of the script, including 2 he wasn't even credited for. Go back and listen to it. You'll find them all there. The only thing I might apologize for is being the greatest writer on this entire platform, but that's only because you now have way fewer channels you can watch because they're just not going to be good enough for you anymore. You're welcome. Hey, give it up for Jerome Moody, everybody. He may be the new reigning champion for the most ironic death of all time. Jerome was a guest at a party for a lifeguard association. There's not too many details in the story, but the New York Times article mentions that at the end of the party, Jerome's body was found at the bottom of the pool, drowned. Oh yeah, the irony is already apparent and obvious, especially since 4 of those lifeguards that were at the party were on duty. But just what makes the story deliciously perfect is the fact that the party was to celebrate the pool going an entire swimming season without anyone drowning. Hey, Big thanks to Ymir, the primordial god giant whose body formed Midgard and therefore all of humanity, for having everything in life line up so perfectly to make a joke just like that. Franco Brune died when he tried to swallow an entire Bible. Okay, the story's not that crazy. He tried to swallow a pocket Bible. It's smaller, it's more manageable, probably tenderizes real good and nice teriyaki sauce. It's not that weird. Franco was a prisoner at the Metro Toronto East Detention Center, and his way out of suffering behind bars was pretty unusual, as he was only serving a 15-day sentence for stealing a credit card and damaging a police vehicle, and if my offhand knowledge of Canadian law is correct, not apologizing after the initial incident. According to the coroner, the deed was done in an effort to purge himself of the devil. That right there's a pretty good story. We're done here. I'm sure Franco, God, Jesus, and Buddha all laughed this up in heaven when they heard it. I'll bet even Bill Gates chimed in from his slice of heaven that he bought with money and said, when you're told to consume religion, you're not supposed to do it literally, and they all high-fived and stuff. But there's a few details to this story that make it even juicier. They're not really related to his death, but I'm going to mention them for your raw, unprotected entertainment value. First off, Franco thinking that the purest way to commune with the Lord is via direct vocal cord Mongolian throat singing actually has a reason behind it. He was mentally ill. Severely mentally ill. One part of this story that's actually kind of hard to find around the internet, and I'm guessing the inferior to me pop tabloids and other channels that cover this might not mention, is that on the day of the incident, Franco was moved to a windowless cell because he used his old cell's window to look out on the street and furiously masturbate. When a prison guard caught him in the act, he had the very pocket Bible in his hands that would eventually spell his doom. My initial thoughts are twofold. One, I know the Bible is the good book, but it's only a moderately good piece of pornography and a pretty terrible nutrition source. And two, God, I hope they washed that Bible before they transferred him. Point is, a windowless cell would also make it harder to monitor Franco. The guards were only scheduled to check on him every 20 minutes, so by this point, he's got ample time to choke himself to death on the ironically named living word. So the deed is done, and Dr. Peter Charlebois, a respiratory specialist, is brought in as part of the investigation team. To quote him directly, "I found I was physically not strong enough to pull the object out of this guy's throat." Franco didn't just block his mouth with the Bible, he really crammed it down in there. Dr. Charlebois initially wanted to rule the case a murder, stating in regards to shoving something down your throat, no one has the will to persistently shove something of such a size, such a solidity. But after everyone concluded that Franco was in total isolation and had no one enter his cell before the incident, the investigation stopped and everyone shrugged it off as maybe he just owned the world's sexiest and tastiest Bible. You know what's always bodacious and badical regardless of how much time passes? Skydiving. Take it at face value. It's not only the successful attempt of jumping out of an airplane thousands of feet above the earth, but it's evolved into an entire sport with tricks and world records and, most exciting of all, synchronization. If you think about it, aside from the mental fortitude and training, there's a really low barrier of entry to a successful skydive. All you need is a way to get up and a way to come safely back down. And if you ditch the concept of safely entirely, the coming down part actually gets really simple. And what if you were such a gnarly guy that your number one priority was capturing the perfect free fall for the entire world to see by any means necessary? Well, that's what happened to Ivan Lester McGuire, a veteran skydiver who wanted to film a fellow instructor and his student doing a tandem dive. It was Ivan's third jump of the day, so it should have been a cakewalk. But in his excitement to film, Ivan forgot to put on his own parachute, thinking the film equipment he strapped to himself was his parachute. From there, you can guess what happened, but you don't need to. One of the ways we know this happened is Ivan's tape of the jump ironically survived where he didn't, and you can watch it on YouTube. I was originally going to place the footage over me talking right now because it's only like 30 seconds long and cuts out before anything remotely unsettling happens, but my years of experience on this sinking ship have taught me that the instant I trust the judgment of YouTube is the instant I watch my career go down in flames, or should I say go down without a chute. Did you laugh? You sick fuck. This next one is not just one, not just two, not just three, but 3 people and a dog combined in a regular old hyper combo finish. This incident happened in Buenos Aires and didn't really receive much international media coverage, so every single source I found was in Spanish, and technically I could use Google Translate to perfectly translate each article into English, but I really do think the Wikipedia summary does a great job of capturing the absurdity of this incident. I think after I read it verbatim, you'll agree it's perfectly inclusive of all relevant facts and well encapsulates how bonkers everything that happened was. I'm just gonna move on when I'm done reading it, so pay attention! Stop fucking grinding major orders in Helldivers 2! A poodle named Kechi in Caballito, Buenos Aires, fell 13 floors and hit 75-year-old Marta Espina, killing both instantly. In the course of events, 46-year-old Edith Sola came to see the incident and was fatally hit by a bus. An unidentified man who witnessed her death had a heart attack and also died on his way to the hospital. Last up, we have Michael Godwin. This video certainly went a lot of directions, but I'm glad we get to end with this guy right at the end of the list, at the very tippy end point of 1989, the year of our Lord, because Michael Godwin probably deserved what he got. Michael was sentenced to jail in South Carolina for robbing a woman at knife point. Okay, so far that's not too bad. I mean, just who doesn't get super desperate to swipe a pair of counterfeit Gucci glasses off the bad bitch getting off her shift at Starbucks? After 4 years into his prison sentence, he was on work release and immediately declared, "Hey, I'm not in jail anymore. That means I can do anything I want. Yippee!" Perhaps taking advantage of the situation to you or me would mean learning a new magic trick or watching a documentary or counting all the pieces of salt in your salt shaker. You know, typical recreational activities. Well, Michael used his newfound freedom to break into a woman's apartment, sexually assault her, and then beat her to death with an iron. Again, my first choice would have been to do something like organize my Steam game library by how attractive I find the main protagonist, but you do you, Michael, I guess. Michael was arrested and put on trial in 1981, and the sentence was death. Wow, that's unusual, someone being given the death penalty in America? Okay, now I know why it's on the list. That never happens. Of course, there's more to this story. You're as sharp as a tack you is. Michael was specifically set to be executed via South Carolina's court of law, and their method of choice during that time period was the electric chair. But Michael's lawyer was tenacious, and during the retrial 2 years later, got his sentence reduced to life in prison. Michael, through America's infallible and absolutely perfect judicial system, had avoided being barbecued festively for all the neighborhood kids to come and point and laugh at. It's now 6 years later in 1989, and Michael's hanging out in his cell just chilling, doing fun prison activities like learning a new magic trick, watching a documentary, and counting all the salt in the salt shakers. Fuck, okay, I really liked that callback joke. I thought it was really good, but it's actually relevant to the story that I mentioned what he was doing at the time, so I'm gonna go ahead and have you laugh, keep laughing. It's like a laugh track, gives you time to laugh. You can tell me in the comments how hysterical I am, how I changed your life. And then now let's go back in time and we'll just do this section over again in a way that'll make sense. It's now 6 years later in 1989, and Michael's hanging out in his cell just chilling, doing fun prison activities. At this time, he's watching the television in his cell, but the headphones he's wearing at the time are malfunctioning, and Michael takes it upon himself to try to fix the faulty wiring within them. Normally this would be fine, the worst he would suffer is maybe a little nasty electric shock, except today Michael has chosen to be adventurous and is watching television on the toilet. Oh dear, some of you probably said, remembering that toilets often contain water, which when mixed with electricity isn't the world's most pleasant experience for the human body. But this is prison. And in this prison, just like many other prisons in America, the toilet was made of metal. Oh, and one last detail. Michael was doing all of this naked. Why? I haven't a single idea, but them's the facts. Michael was found dead during a routine cell check. His mouth and teeth had severe burns, and speculative analysis of the accident say that he was probably safe while handling the wire in general. But as soon as he put it in his moist, open mouth, that combined with the wet metal toilet seat below him created a perfect storm of obliterating his insides with electrical current. A fitting punishment for a predatory felon, and perhaps the most ironic fate anyone could ever devise. In the case of Michael Godwin, God wins. And that's all we got. I hope you laughed as much as I did at these people who died. You think that's insensitive? Well, just remember, I'm still alive and kicking, and that should give you cause for celebration. Then again, I could die at any time, and so could you, and there's nothing funnier than that. But that doesn't mean we have to give in to the universe's immortal punchline, because he who laughs last laughs best. And brother, if you're watching my videos, you're probably laughing beside me.